What is going on, RotoGrinders? Dean here. It's Dean Shavelson in the DFS circles. Once again, we're back for the NFL Pick 6 show. It's 9 o'clock on the dot on the East Coast on a Wednesday night. As usual, two of the sharpest minds in all of NFL fantasy football, all of DFS. Batting first, leading off, John Daigle from Roto World. How are things in your world? We don't really look back so much, but sure, why not? Let's live it again. How bad was Week 10 for you? Hopefully not as bad as it was for me.
It was not good, but it wasn't bad. It barely bubbled, right? Playing with the chalk in the morning slate and did not late swap properly, as we talked about in the last one. But yeah, by the way, is this my Wi-Fi that's messed up, or is this the new program? Because we're changing programs here in week 11. I don't know what's going on right now.
I don't. Well, when you can change programs in week 11, you
gotta do it. You got to do it.
Listen, anytime you can pull Jake Luton off the bench, you go to him.
You got to do it.
That voice you hear is Rich Hribar, of course, from Shark Football Analysis. Hopefully, we're coming through and everybody can see us on YouTube. What's up, YouTube? Like and subscribe. We do appreciate that. I'm going to do my best to keep an eye on chat. I know most of the guys in chat are probably watching the NBA draft. That is also worth noting if you guys watch this in the repeat. Anything we're talking about, it is Wednesday. We always say this. We always stress this. Wednesday, it's kind of sort of an early look. Lots of things change throughout the week. So, yeah, understand if we speak, watching on Friday and something's changed. Yeah, that's why, because it's not live necessarily. So, Rich, this is like kind of we'll break down the three games as we normally do. 3 games, we kind of branch out and talk about players for like different positions. But this is kind of a throwback week in that there's no 57, 58, 59, 55 total. The biggest total on the board is 51. We'll be talking about that in a second. That's one of the 3 games that actually hit the board. I was 2 out of 3, by the way. Not bad as far as guessing the 3 games we're going to focus on. I didn't want to talk about Green Bay and Indianapolis because I really don't like to talk about Indianapolis, but I'm going to yield to you guys. That'll be fun for sure.
Well, he's dunking on you, Daigle. Just dunking on you.
The third game I struggled with. Like, wait till we get to the third game.
Well, that kind of speaks to my point as an overall, like this slate, like you can argue the 2 best games that are being played this week are not on the main slate. Of course, we don't talk about the Thursday night football, which is Arizona-Seattle, which would be an absolute blast. 57.5 as far as that total. Sunday night, KC Vegas, 56.5. We don't talk about that. Have a good time on the Showdown slate. You'll find some content, RotoGrinders, for that for sure. Hey, get yourself some content here at RG. $5 off their first month. Devin, our fabulous multitasking producer, go ahead and drop that link in chat for the people. That's for your core 4 football, baseball, basketball, and golf. Basketball right around the corner. Draft going down tonight. Season starts next month. It's like it just ended. It's amazing. I can't wait, though. No Rams, no Bucks as far as the teams on bye. As Buffalo, the Bears, the Giants, who may or may not be fighting amongst the coaches. Who knows what's going on there. And the 49ers. Yeah, so Hribar, this week, we'll break it down as far as the games, but there's nothing to get terribly enthused about. Am I wrong in saying that?
No, I mean, well, listen, we're creatures of habit, just like, us switching this program that we use to do this show. We gravitate every Sunday when we open up the main slate. We all like to see just main slate pricing, and we gravitate immediately to, by now, 10 weeks in, on our 11th week, we go to first. Who are the Seattle Seahawks playing? Oh, they're not on the main slate. All right, cool. Who are the Arizona Cardinals playing? Oh, they're on Thursday. All right, well, we got the Bills, right? No, Bills are on bye. Oh, Chiefs, cool. No, they're not there either. So, listen, we're creatures of habit. All those teams are gone. Those are the teams we orbit, every week. Like, where our core plays, we typically go there. The running back position has gotten really weird as the season has progressed because we've lost a lot of just like apex running backs along the way, and we're really down to kind of just 2 guys at this point. So we've got Dalvin Cook, like price. This has to be the most expensive Dalvin Cook's ever been on either site. And then, we've got Alvin Kamara, tried and true. But other than that, like, there's just not a lot of place to go with these big ducats, man. We're looking for these running backs to play, and if you can't jam both of those guys in, there are at least some running back plays a little bit, but this I think cheap wide receiver is tough this week, and maybe you guys will have some gems to unlock some Pandora's box for me. But right now, cheap wide receivers are where I'm struggling to find. But you hit the nail on that. We've lost those core teams that we've built around all year because they're the games that have been high scoring and shootouts, and they're not on the board this week.
Yeah, if it was the year like 2015, you'd be excited about AJ Green is 3.6K and T.Y. Hilton's 4.2K DK specific, but it's the year 2020, and those guys. Daigle, who's dustier? If you're gonna have a dust off, AJ Green or T.Y. Hilton?
Doesn't AJ Green have 19 yards, something like that, in his last 10 targets the past 2 weeks? And then T.Y. Hilton has yet to. We'll talk about T.Y. Hilton when we get there, but T.Y. Hilton, of course, hasn't exceeded 70 yards or scored a touchdown in any game this year. Pretty much been passed up on the depth chart now by a guy I'm sure we'll discuss. So, I mean, that's the thing about 2020 is that we know we can avoid these guys safely no matter what DraftKings continues doing to their pricing.
J.D. McKissick looks like AJ Green. It's like, dude, you got to get some more yards per catch, man. We'll talk about him too, which is going to be a lot of fun as well. Him and his 29 targets the last 2 weeks, give or take. It's been a lot. Find somebody to like you the way Alex Smith loves some J.D. McKissick.
51% target share in the first half of that game. Luckily, they realized that's why they were losing by 21 points and stopped throwing to him in the second half and then started to score touchdowns. But we
get a Silva appearance mid-show too, by the way.
We got a Silva appearance? I don't have the video on.
He just put the bunny ears on me. He walked by purposely right now. Anyways.
I heard a dog barking too. Is that a situation going on in your house as well?
That was either daughter or groceries being put down. There's a lot going on in this house right now. Don't worry about it. It's the last pick six of the Silva Manor era, by the way. I'm out of here on Friday. So a sad night, but nonetheless, we're going to get through.
It was a good run.
Oh, no.
First game. Most exciting game on the board, I guess. Sure. Why
Thanksgiving. Not? Leaving before Thanksgiving.
We got family to attend to, but yeah. Anyways, we can move on now.
Atlanta versus the Saints. 50.5 is the total. Second highest total on the board as of Wednesday night. Drew Brees, we're expecting he's going to be out. Jameis, well, let's talk about this situation. And I guess, people always talk about, hey, you guys don't talk about FanDuel. And I try. We try, but it feels like DK just sort of it gets the bulk of the conversation in the industry for whatever reason. I play both sites. You guys dabble as well too. But we're going to talk about Taysom Hill, of course, not so much on DK, unless somehow he's announced as a starter and they're still kind of playing coy. But tight ends. This is what we're starting, Hribar. Sure, why not? We'll talk about the quarterback situation, talk about Jameis, and then talk about Taysom. No good tight ends.
The two best tight ends are on Sunday night. and even calling Waller, I hate saying there's two good tight ends too, because the gap from Waller to Kelsey is still so gigantic. In PPR leagues, Travis Kelsey has outscored Darren Waller by 51 points. Darren Waller, 51-point gap is to the tight end 20. So it's not even I hate even including Waller with Kelsey because it's Kelsey's so far above him too. But yeah, the position sucks and no one wants to play anybody. So why not play a guy like Taysom Hill? Why not?
No one even wants to play like Mark Andrews, and he's a tight end 5 overall in the entire year. It's a disastrous position.
Bogus. Dude, last week the highest scoring tight end scored 13 PPR points in fantasy football. It was a disaster. But yeah, so why not play a guy like Taysom Hill, who already has more rushing attempts and rushing yardage?
What is going on?
What is going on over there?
Do I have it muted? Is the mic muted?
No.
Oh shit! I'm sorry.
He's having a blast.
Trash compactor going on. The cars.
I'm sorry. I thought I had it muted. What the? I don't know how to work this new program. This is a disaster.
I feel like Devin's just
usually we have the mic muted. There's a whole thing going on here. I'm sorry, guys. Okay.
Is this? Yeah, I mean, there's a hootenanny going on over there. Breaking. Someone's breaking bottles back there. I don't know what it is. Maybe that's a sign. Maybe that's the show's sign that the Taysom Hill is either going to be a terrible play or go off. But he can't be worse than the tight ends you've already played. He already has more rushing attempts and yardage than he had all of last season. And you can just play him with Winston and kind of cover both worlds of, hey, because I think Winston has got, some sketchiness to him. If you see the end of last week's game, are they going to pull him in the red zone? Are they going to get cute like they've done all year? Use Taysom Hill maybe a little bit more, and maybe that ruins your kind of, DK, chalky play or cheap quarterback. But on FanDuel, there's no really risk in that in playing Jameis Cash. Because you could pair him with Taysom Hill, and there's not really, any lop off there, whereas you can't do that on DraftKings. So everyone that wants us to talk about FanDuel, this is your time. Taysom Hill is only tight end eligible on FanDuel. So
he's going to come in 30, 40% rostered at the stone minimum.
There's no opportunity cost, right? Like,
No.
who are you missing? There's no FOMO. Like, who maybe Andrews. I suppose Andrews still shows flashes, and like I kind of want to make Lamar happen.
Like 25 on you here.
Also, how much do you just hate fun if you play Mark Andrews over Taysom Hill at the tight end? Like, you just hate your life. Just play Taysom Hill.
We live below the salary cap. We talk about Dalvin Cook, who's a 10.5K on FanDuel, and it's just not super easy. Just kind of slide him in there. We don't, Mike Davis, despite the fact being terrible, got a big bump. So there's no like quote unquote like I don't want to say lock because obviously it wasn't. It didn't kind of work out for us, but it's a process over results, I suppose, right? Well, so you talked about Hribar. You talked about Jameis and cash. Is that something we're doing? Because I am concerned that he's going to get pulled, especially on the 5, on the 10, on the goal line, and get the hook for Taysom and. The matchup is great. Obviously, you got him in a dome and against Atlanta. Atlanta, not a good pass defense as far as the DVOA. 28th against the pass. They're been good against the run for what it's worth, 7th. So you'd imagine, he's well positioned. And last week he did try to hit the ball to Mike Thomas a couple times, and it didn't work out, which was totally tilting because I had way too much Thomas. But again, forward-thinking show. Is Jameis our de facto cash guy as of Wednesday night, or I hate to say Lamar, but Lamar I think is interesting again because there's some floor, and I swear the ceiling's there. I'm promised. I'm told. I've seen it happen before. Where are you at as far as Winston and your confidence level?
Well, I don't think he's a lock for cash. I was just saying if you wanted to play him in cash because he's cheaper, he's a cheaper option, that you have the benefit of FanDuel at least not having to. You can hedge, with Taysom Hill, whereas you don't have the opportunity on DraftKings. So like there's at least if you could talk yourself into Atlanta allowing 18 or more fantasy points to every quarterback they've faced outside of just one game. And Teddy probably was going to get there. That game got crazy rain in the second half, and then he got knocked out for a couple drives. He had a really good, strong first half of that game. But if you want to go there, I think that if obviously the main cash guys are going to be Watson and Cam Newton. At least on a site like FanDuel, especially Cam Newton, maybe on DraftKings where you're not going to get the bonus. But those guys, and we'll talk about, I guess, in the next game. But I think, Winston, when you look at just Atlanta, where they get beat, it's kind of, a lot of people said, well, this isn't the same situation that, Teddy Bridgewater walked into last year. But they can easily transition their offense to kind of do the same things with Teddy Bridgewater. What if the Saints actually can do things that they couldn't do with those two guys, though, with Jameis Winston? Where Atlanta is getting beat is downfield, even with the coaching change, because they've been better since Raheem Morris took over as head coach. And I'd love to see Raheem Morris get that head coaching job and make his way into there, and then the Rams or the Falcons will be terrible for like another 4 years. But where Atlanta is getting beat is they've allowed 4.9 passing plays of 20 or more yards per game. It's the most in the league. It's continued through Raheem Morris. They've allowed more passing yardage on throws, completions of 20 or more yards than even Seattle Seahawks, the most in the league. Even over 100 yards more than the Seahawks, who are like the worst pass defense in almost any metric you can find. Not this one. So maybe they get the ball downfield more than they've done, the past couple of years. Maybe Winston takes some shots like there. You can also just play Atlanta's defense with Winston too. It's always tried and true. He'll probably give you one, maybe two. But yeah, I think that the passing volume is going to be here. I'm not as nervous as a lot of people. I think he'll be fine with preparation. I think the weaponry is good. They're indoors. Atlanta doesn't, really generate a lot of heat. So, I'm fine with Winston if you need to go there. I like the other two guys more, but I think being able to pair him with Taysom Hill alleviates a lot of the concern that you're going to get, blindsided in every red zone trip.
Daigle, I'm going to pin you down on a Wednesday night. This is totally unfair, but opportunities. Give me opportunities for a Hill. Targets, rushes, and passes. Over under 10.5.
First of all, everyone moved downstairs, so I think we're finally safe on this end. So I also found the mute button, so that's going to help us out along the way as well. Second of all, we are fresh off a game that Taysom Hill quietly matched Alvin Kamara in carries last week. So I'm thinking 5 to 8, I'm going to say. I'll pin it down. I was going to say 5 to 10. That's too broad. 5 to 8 carries, 2 to 4 passes, and 3 targets. So how many opportunities is that? Let's say it's 8. Let's say it's 6 carries. So 12 opportunities.
I'll take the under on almost all of them.
You'll take the under on all of them?
Under 5 rushes?
Not rushes. The targets and passes, I'll definitely take the under on.
Okay. Do you think it's going to be closer than to last year where they do get Taysom on the field more with Jameis, but they still limit his usage in the offensive personnel because they know he's their only other quarterback? Like, that's why they limited him last year.
I mean, potentially, yeah. I just don't think they also just like him throwing very often. If you look, like, he just doesn't really throw a lot. And there's a reason for it. He only really throws on like these design plays. So that's why I definitely will want to take the under on the pass snaps, unless like there's some injury or something like that, but, to throw it off skew. But yeah, I don't think he's going to just drop back and throw a lot. What you care about is the rushing attempts and potentially a rushing score, though, especially at tight end. I mean, that's what you would really love to see happen. You just get in the box on one of these, one of these keepers and these RPOs. But yeah, I definitely don't think he's going to be throwing a lot. And you tack on what you said. I think that makes a lot of sense as well.
On FanDuel, I just wish it was more plausible to go up to Jared Cook, but you're going to 6,100, and for a guy that's going to get 2 to 4 targets, like that's a disaster to pay up for. But I wish that was the more reasonable pivot. Having said that, like you said, Dean, you played Michael Thomas last week, and the good news is Michael Thomas did have a 30% target share. The issue is that I don't think he's healthy at all. What have we seen now the past 3 games? 5, 6, and 7 targets. He caught 2 of those 7 targets for 27 yards. It's a bit of a mess right now. So if he's healthy, sure, it's a tremendous, tremendous matchup. But he's clearly a guy that you can't trust, and you're playing in tournaments more or less, hoping he turns it around, and that's about it.
Traquan, we don't really know about right now on a Wednesday night. I think he got concussed or he got hit pretty hard last game. Currently questionable. Can't really speak to that for what it's worth. Last thing I'll say about Taysom is like his opportunities. Not all opportunities are created equal. His opportunities are premium. Like if he's getting the ball at the 3, at the 5, at the 1 sometimes. So there's a certain value to that, and he's going to add his name to the list of tight ends that have scored rushing touchdowns, like Evan Ingram and the dude for Indianapolis. Why is he a tight end? Like, why is that the position on fan? Is it worth even questioning that? Why?
It's the same on ESPN season-long leagues as well, by the way. He is both quarterback and tight end dual eligibility. I'll also say that I don't know what you have on your end, Dean, but Jameis Winston, I'm assuming, is going to be one of the higher roster quarterbacks in tournaments. And given all we've discussed right now, how volatile the situation is, that seems like a pretty easy
So I do this all the time on DK and on FanDuel, and I add some variants as well to it. I run 300 quote-unquote optimal lineups. And again, this is on Wednesday night. So many goofy things change. And I have Jameis just landing in 5% on DK, and I have him landing just 3% on FanDuel, which is I was surprised by that too, to be honest. And of course, you know who the leading guy? Lamar is number 1 on FanDuel, and Deshaun Watson's number 2, number 1 on DK. It's basically Watson, Newton, Lamar, some sort of combination of that, and then and Teddy's in there right now. We don't know what's going to happen with Teddy, if he's going to play or not. That would change things up, possibly some percentages being shuffled. How about Kamara? I mean, we like Kamara. How much do we like Kamara, Hribar? Compare him, if you can, to like Cook. You can only have one. Who do you prefer?
Which one's cheaper? Kamara, right?
Kamara.
Yeah, 10-5. So sure, I mean, if I can say the Ducks, I don't think it's hard to get to Cook, though, either this week, even though there are no cheap receivers. But if you want to play, there's a lot of running backs that can that mid-price range that I think there's a big gap. I think these are the 2 guys, and then there's a huge gap, and we'll touch on like the guy in the middle that's also priced highly, would be high in like your season-long rankings if you were to like cross-pollinate to try to like decide who you're going to play. But I mean, I have no problem, with Kamara, and I feel like we've almost tried to talk ourselves out of him as like the season's gone on. There's really no reason to. Touchdown equity, passing equity, it's all there. They're going to throw to him a lot. They involved him. Winston threw to him a lot, when he came in the game. So no problem with it this year. Atlanta is allowing the most receiving points again to running backs. They had like a year reprieve where they didn't give up a bunch of receptions last year. And then this year, they're just kind of like right back at it. They're 28th in receiving points allowed to running backs. So we're going to have that. He already has more touchdowns than he had last year. We knew that was coming. I wish I would have been like more bullish on him, like ahead of guys. But I mean, there were some injuries that happened, but because it was so clear he was going to have touchdown regression this year. But I'm fine with either guy. I don't even want to not Cook either. Like Cook is a great play as well. They're both great plays. Play them both.
Kamara, for what it's worth, I misspoke. FanDuel specific, Cook is more expensive than Kamara. Cook is $200 less on DK than Kamara. Of course, Kamara gets benefits of their scoring structure with the full point as far as the PPR. As far as the New Orleans defense, it's good. It's been good this season. You check out the old DVOA. It's kind of a cheat code. Number 1 against the run, number 6 against the pass. Hribar, what do you have for me as far as Atlanta? Do we care about Atlanta much in this game?
Yeah, I mean, we do. I mean, because you wanted to be back and forth in the dome. I mean, Matt Ryan's never a guy I like to play. He also has just kind of like a pedestrian history versus the Saints. He's only gone in his past 10 games. He's only thrown more than 2 passing touchdowns in 2 of the games. These teams are familiar with each other. But with Atlanta side, it's always really easy. Play Julio, you play Ridley, and if you're feeling froggy, you can play Hayden Hurst. Hayden Hurst had like a solid floor, but I think on DK, Hayden Hurst is definitely in play. I think he's 4K on DK, which is pretty nice because he's just been like a solid floor play. 5 of his past 6 games, he's had 50 or more yards. So you get that nice little floor. He's had 7 targets in at least his past 3 games. The Saints have allowed a sprinkling of touchdowns to tight ends. 6 different tight ends have had a touchdown against them. They're allowing 5.3 catches per game, which is 26. Some of that's still inflated from the Darren Waller game, but they're pretty decent like on a per target basis. But I mean, Hayden Hurst is fine. I think he's in play there. But Atlanta's always pretty easy though. We're not playing Todd Gurley. That's what you want to play Falcon, not Todd Gurley.
Yeah, I don't want to play Todd Gurley. It doesn't seem like a lot of fun at all. The most appealing thing, if you're going to run it back, you're going to play it like it was last year. Like my favorite correlation play, it shouldn't be a correlation play, was playing Jameis against the defense he played against.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. I'm sure it's been floated out there already, and I don't know if that's going to be a thing necessarily. And it's kind of sort of a joke, but not really. He'll chuck the ball. He'll throw a lot of picks. Also get you a lot of yards as well.
Rich hit on it a little earlier. Like Winston had 14 dropbacks against the Niners. He took 2 sacks, and Jimmy Ward dropped an interception that was thrown directly at him. So I mean, it's just typical Jameis is all it is.
33 touchdowns and 30 interceptions last season.
Interceptions are only -1 in DFS.
Well, I was telling somebody else, like, ideal if my starting quarterback, especially one that is like favored, I would love it if their first pass of the game was a pick 6. Love it. Like, I'll take that -1 all day. Give it to me. It's great. Let's all of a sudden flip that game script. And I don't think he's going to do that for us. He may do it accidentally. Hurst, by the way, 4.4K on DK for what it's worth. 4K, close enough. And again, Wednesday night, I don't really freak out about Wednesday practice, but Kamara was questionable, or he was limited with a foot, but I'm not ready to freak out just yet. I don't care about Wednesday stuff. You got anything here, Daigle, as far as Atlanta? And we don't know about Ridley either. Again, who knows? We'll see. Julio is certainly interesting as far as a bring back in the dome. Can you sell me as far as Atlanta, or this is mostly about New Orleans?
No, Rich said it all pretty much. I would say that we have seen now that without Ridley, smaller sample, of course, the offense can sustain and Matt Ryan can sustain, whereas without Julio, they just collapse completely. So as long as Julio's involved and he seems to be healthy, I think Julio's still a good play no matter what. Also, I'm still somewhat skeptical about the Saints defense because they got Brady, who they've hounded in 2 games this year, and then an injured 49ers team. And remember, before that, they were just getting drenched in splash plays every single week. So perhaps they had that annual switch they do mid-year every single year, or maybe we should still believe that they are a defense that are susceptible to the big play. So I kind of like Julio or Ridley or some kind of combination there.
All right, we'll pivot to the Packers at the Colts. Another game in the Dome. Highest total on the board, 51. It's high and it's tight. Colts are just a 2-point favorite here. Daigle. So you pick these games, and it wasn't easy. I thought it was a tough. The big 3, the feature. I just don't like the Colts are just a mess. And how do you project target share on this team? They have 3 tight ends that can potentially get there. They have 3 running backs that can potentially get there. They have a quarterback you never want to roster. They have Dusty T.Y. Hilton, who's super, super cheap. But you did reference there is somebody that might be on the rise on the Indianapolis side where the price is not fully caught up just yet. I can't get excited if this is the ultimate whack-a-mole team. I have a hard time getting there as far as being confident in anybody. But sure, tournaments is a pool of players. Talk to me about the Colts.
Okay. First of all, I picked this game for the Packers side, but I do like the Colts side. I will say the Colts team total has been the largest increase of any teams this week on nearly 2 points already. This game has increased from 49 to 51 since it initially opened, which makes it the highest total on the entire main slate. And the Colts have been, so Phillip Rivers, of course, touch and go, and the whole offense is a weird one, but at least I think that we have seen Michael Pittman. It's only one game, of course, but Michael Pittman stand out. I mentioned earlier that Hilton hasn't exceeded 70 yards or a touchdown in any game this year, whereas Pittman came in on Thursday, recorded team highs in target snaps, red zone targets, and routes run among all of Indy's wideouts. And despite all of that, the shallowest average depth of target on the team with 6.8, making his floor safe as well. It depends if we get Jair Alexander and Kevin King back. They were both out last week. And of course, Jake Luton still couldn't take advantage of that situation. But I do wonder if Alexander is healthy, if he doesn't just match up on T.Y. Hilton, which is what a football coach would do, because it's not the right thing to do. You would rather obviously put Alexander on Pittman, but I still think there's a chance that doesn't happen. So I like Pittman. I think the Colts will be playing for Heim because I do like Aaron Rodgers and the Packers offense in this game, and that's why I brought this one up.
All right, we'll go back to you in a second as far as the Packers. I want to get Hribar's takes as far as the Colts, and I see Beats Boz here in the chat on YouTube. What up, YouTube? Like and subscribe. We do appreciate that. It helps out the channel immensely. Helps us putting up the free shows here. Hines, he's talking about Hines for the win. FTW. Yeah, he was a monster last time, but and he can get there via the catch, via the run. He was the best running back amongst the three last week. And I know it's early, and I'm not ready to say like Taylor is just terrible, but he looks awful. Like quote unquote the eye test. This is not very good, and it seems like they're losing confidence in him as well. What do you have for me as far as the running back situation here? If you're going to play one, I suppose it's Hines. He can get there in multiple ways, via the pass, via the run, multiple routes there. Hribar, Indianapolis, sell me on somebody.
And one of them. Frank Reich has openly come out and said that he's going to play all three guys early in the game, and then he's going to play the guy who's playing the best for the rest of the game. And it happened to be Hines last week. Up until last week, every carry to Nyheim Hines was like a gift to the defense, though. Like he coming into last week's game, he had the highest rate of runs that failed to gain yardage in the NFL. And then popped last week. He was hot. I mean, you watch the game, he was hot, man. Every time he touched the ball, he was good. So I mean, Frank Reich's tried and true. He's holding on to his words. He gave Wilkins a short yardage touch. He got stoned, didn't come back in the game. He also gator armed a fourth down play call. It was out of the field. He got nothing the rest of the way. Jonathan Taylor had a couple all right plays, like in the context of just like having a pulse. From what we've seen, he did truck a dude, which was like kind of cool. What's crazy about the Jonathan Taylor, no one would have ever thought he busted this year and still like been a way better receiver than anyone imagined. And like somehow that came true. Like he proved he was actually like a decent receiver, like a solid receiver, which everyone is worried about. And it was like just a running game. He's just like Helen Keller, like mixed with like Ray Charles. Can't like hit a hole for his life. And can't break any tackles. I mean, if you look at just these three backs on like a breaking tackle perspective, he's not even in the same stratosphere as these guys. Wilkins has broken a tackle on 26% of his touches. Nyheim Hines, 19%. Jonathan Taylor, 9.6%. It's crazy that the way we thought he was going to be coming out of college in his first year in the NFL has just been so night and day from what we expected. And now he's just stuck in like this 3-man committee. I will say though, he does seem to get the call when they get into the paint, like in the area. He does seem to come in when they get there. I know Nyheim Hines had one after he was running pure, but I mean, I don't know how you really pick any of these guys based on that. I mean, you can talk yourself into Hines because he has he already has the passing equity. And if you were just to tack on rushing equity, then that makes him a good play. But he had 22 touches his previous 4 games. It's just really hard. Man. It's just really hard. It's a matchup we would love for one guy to be in too. We have a home team indoors with a 27+ team total against a team that doesn't even care about stopping the run. They couldn't even care less. Like they'll openly tell you, Mike Pence, like, I don't care if we get run on, and we can't play. I don't know how you play these guys. I just don't know how you confidently do it, other than you saying, "Yeah, I'm just going to go all in on this guy, and if he hits, he hits."
Because that's the thing. Like, yeah, you can play them, but understand you're taking on your own risk. Like it literally is an egg if they don't win the roll in the first 2 drives. And that's what happened 3 weeks ago. It was Jordan Wilkins because Jonathan Taylor rushed for 13 yards on his first 6 carries. Nyheim Hines wasn't involved on the ground. Thus, they just went to Wilkins by default. The next week, it was Jonathan Taylor, but then game script got out of hand against the Ravens in the second half, and they only run the ball 6 times total in the second half. Taylor got one of those carries because when he did get hot, he still fumbled as well. And then last week, of course, was Nyheim Hines, who totaled 58 yards on his first 7 touches. And then, of course, he won the roles of the rest of the game. So it's going to be decided in game. None of us will ever know. The Colts don't know who's going to lead in touches when they're going to the game. So sure, if you want to bank on that, but it just seems like a dead lineup from the get-go.
Yeah, I think Pittman is if you're going to force me to pick somebody in Indy right now that I feel most confident about when you consider price and all that good stuff, I think Pittman is probably the guy. If you want to run it back as far as Green Bay. And who are we running it back with, Daigle? You want to talk about the Packers. Wednesday night, there was an issue. What is Devontae Adams dealing with? He's got some kind of injury where there was a weird quote about him saying he's going to try to play, or going to play, or again, Wednesday. What was the quote?
He suffered an ankle injury in that game, but also he suffered it before he came back and basically out-leaped every fan in the stadium, whatever many they had, because he got so high on that lob ball, and that was after the injury. So I still think he plays. We'll see what happens. It's 2020. You never know nowadays. But Aaron Rodgers, of course, he's only fallen flat on his face once this year. It was against that Bucs defense. And ever since then, he's been humming along as a top 8 quarterback in his last 4 games, 300 yards and or multiple touchdowns in all 4 of those contests. Of course, it has come against susceptible foes. It's defenses he could easily attack. Having said that, the Colts are the number 5 passing DVOA, I believe, right now. 15th in adjusted sack rate of Football Outsiders, but they really haven't been tested this year. Gardner Minshew, Kirk Cousins, Sam Darnold, Nick Foles, Baker Mayfield, they allowed 300 yards to Burrow. Stafford pinned them for 330 and 3 touchdowns. And then, of course, these past 2 weeks against passers, we don't have the most respect for. They're good players, but Lamar Jackson through the air, and then Ryan Tannehill as the Titans defense has fluttered pretty much the past 3 or 4 games. So I do like Aaron Rodgers a lot in this spot, hoping Devontae Adams, of course, is healthy, because I would run him easily, perhaps even with a double stack with Allen Lazard if he's clear.
Aaron Jones was a big flop last week. He was in the field for 63% of snaps or something like that. In Vegas, or was it DK Sportsbook, had him minus 340, minus 325 to score a touchdown, which is truly a mega number. That's a pretty insane number. You don't really see too often, and he didn't get there. Got to the 1 or 2 yard line, and of course, Rodgers went ahead and siphoned it. He's got that chip on his shoulder. He wants those touchdowns. That's just sort of my thought process in that, and that makes him kind of sort of somewhat interesting, especially in the dome against, like you said, this Indy defense. I'm still not certain. I think they're a pretty good defense, but I'm not certain they're elite. Because who they played against, they played against nobody still. And I wouldn't be surprised if Rodgers puts up the biggest number on Indy all season long. What do you have for me, Hribar, as far as the Packers side?
Yeah, pretty much that. I mean, I do think the way the Colts are stylistically, the way they play defense under Matt Eberflus, though, is a problem for what the Packers do. Because the Packers, and Aaron Rodgers specifically for fantasy, has been good on the deep ball. I mean, he leads all quarterbacks and fantasy points on throws 15 yards or further downfield, end points per attempt on those throws. The Colts are one of the best defense on that because they just play so much shell coverage. They play so much zone. They play almost as much zone in the league than any other team, outside of the Panthers. So they just don't give up a lot of big plays inherently, and that's they make you kind of bleed them to death. Rodgers is capable of doing that as well, but I mean, I think those couple big plays we've seen from Marcus Valdes-Scantling the last couple weeks, might dry up here. This might be a good spot where that, his variance kind of skews back because his usage hasn't changed at all. No. He's just connected. He's hit on those plays, on back-to-back games. So I mean, I also think too that the way they're set up, and some of the moves they've made this offseason and the year prior, they're really good at getting pressure without blitzing. So you play a lot of zone coverage, and your front four can get pressure. That's a good recipe. You don't give up big plays, and you can get home without sending extra defenders. That is a pretty good signal. I know they haven't really played a lot of people, but I do think they do some things fundamentally that gives just inherently it doesn't offer a lot of ceiling weeks to performers. And Stafford got there in junk script. Last time. They were up big, and he put up some points late. So it's tough to say. I mean, I don't dislike Rodgers by any means. I don't dislike this game. We got a game in the dome. We're in that time of the year where we're looking for nice weather games. We're looking for dome games. But the Packers, I mean, they're one of these teams we know who to play. Is Devontae playing? We're going to play him. Are we excited to play Marcus Valdes-Scantling? No. Can we pay up for Aaron Jones? Sure. But, he's sagged here, though. You look at his last 3 games, he's ran 38 times for 119 yards, 3.1 yards a pop. The Colts are good against the run. They've got a good defensive line. And they've got a good resume. Unlike Daigle laid out of those quarterbacks they faced James Robinson. They faced Kareem Hunt. They faced Dalvin Cook. They faced Joe Mixon. And they've shut those guys down. Mm-hmm. So, they do have a good resume of backs too. So, I will say this, though. Aaron Jones is one of these guys. We've seen his touchdown potential. He hasn't gone 3 straight games without a touchdown since the 2017 season. And that's what he's pacing towards if he doesn't score this week. So, if you're going to get back in, this is the week because no one's really going to be on him, I don't think.
Yeah, I haven't pulled that up as far as the running back ownership, but I imagine he's not going to be a guy that's popping. In 300 lineups, he is in 0 of the 300 optimal lineups, at least on FanDuel and on the fly. I'm pulling up the DK one as well. And he's pulling up in 0 of both. And that's adding some variance as well, too. And of course, he can absolutely bounce back.
So on a slate like this, if you're going to get where you have really 2 top dogs, Alvin Kamara and Dalvin Cook, at the running back position, like full on bell cow backs. And then like Aaron Jones is probably the next closest guy to those guys. Outside of maybe a Miles Sanders, or I'm sure we'll talk about DeAndre Swift, that can be like a dual, like a guy that has like multiple touchdown potential. Aaron Jones has that on any slate versus any opponent. Like if he's going to come in like under, like around 10% ownership, then I'm not going to talk anyone out of that.
We got Nick Young, Swaggy P in the chat talking about Tunyon. He's 3-2 on DK, and I guess he's as good as almost any dart at that price point, but I'm not enthused about that, Daigle. And Lazard probably comes back this week. I believe he's going to be coming off the IR. It's hard to get excited. And like MBS, Lazard, ESB, anybody but Adams just doesn't do anything for me. And, it could be anybody that sort of pops up and scores. It's kind of like Indianapolis outside of Adams. You really can't trust anything else in this Green Bay offense. Anything else here you want to clean it up? Any thoughts as far as those guys? I can't get excited about Tunyon.
No, I'm not really.
The Colts are the last team to not allow a tight end touchdown. And Tunyon hasn't had an end zone target since that Monday night game that he had 3.
Pending what happens with Jack Doyle in the protocol, I can get excited about Mo Alley-Cox. Also, depending what happens with Trey Burton, who was DNP on Wednesday. But Alley-Cox actually outsnapped and ran more routes than Burton last week with just the 2 of them. So if that's fine again, that's also a little run back if you don't want to play Michael Pittman, because again, tight end this week is an absolute mess, and I won't laugh at anyone for playing anyone. Just play people.
Yeah, if he's last man standing at 2.9K, sure. I'm in on that for sure. That's definitely worth exploring, and we'll see how that goes as the week progresses. We're going to go 3 for 3 as far as our dome games we're featuring. New England at Houston. Houston getting 2 points here. 48.5 is the total. Seeing a lot of ownership as far as both quarterbacks in the side. And hey, why not, Hribar? When you can roster a quarterback who's thrown 1 touchdown in the last 2 months, you just got to do it, right?
Yeah, when you look at Cam though, and I feel like that's the general consensus, right? Like I feel like most people are just kind of done with Cam. Like it feels like that there's a vibe like people have done Cam. But you look at it, so he's made 8 starts now. He's been a QB1 in 6 of them for fantasy. Like, he's still getting there. He's still completely getting there, and he's had a really high floor. But I feel like, definitely you're not getting those passing touches. I think that makes him a tough play in DK is, you inherently are picking a quarterback that's not going to get you the bonus, which we always hate to do. But I think he's got a really high floor, and especially in this game against the Houston team that doesn't get any pressure on the quarterback. They're 27th in pressure rate. They're terrible against the pass. They're 30th in passing points allowed per pass attempt. It's very similar to, I think, like the Jets matchup he had on Monday night. I think he's going to be fine throwing the football. Do I think he's going to throw 300 yards? No, he's not going to do that. Unless they're really pushed. Maybe they are here, but I think he's got a really high floor. We know he's got touchdown equity. He has the most red zone carries on a percentage basis of his all carries than any player in the NFL. 32% of his carries come in the red zone. He is second in the NFL in carries inside the 5-yard line. He has 12 of his 16 team carries inside the 5-yard line. I think he's a good play. I think he's a really solid play. I think he's a great floor play, and I think he's got it has a ceiling potential. If Deshaun Watson does his part here, which I believe he will, which I like this game in totality because I think Watson is going to be good again. I'm willing to throw that last Sunday's game completely out the window. What we saw from the offense in the wind again in Cleveland. That's why we didn't pick any other games inside the Dome. So we've talked about Cleveland in 2 weeks of the past 3 weeks, and come Sunday you can't play anybody in those games, and they're already calling for wind and rain again on this Sunday early on. So like we'll leave that alone this week. We're gonna pick all games, so we don't have to worry about all these takes are gonna be evergreen for 5 days. We're gonna live with that. But and then I think Watson is probably the best of like the top quarterbacks to play, just because we get that dual usage. Previously, before that Browns Winfield game, he had thrown for over 9 yards a pass attempt, in 5 straight games. Patriots just allowed 20 or more fantasy points to Joe Flacco and Lamar Jackson in their past 2 games. And then Watson has a pretty solid resume against the Patriots in his 3 starts, especially when you go back last year when the Patriots were a dominant NFL defense and mushed just about everybody. I mean, he had almost 30 fantasy points against them. So he's had some success. His first ever career start, was in Foxborough. Not his first career start in Foxborough, his first start in Foxborough. He had 20 fantasy points in that game as well, too. So, I mean, the Patriots are allowing 7.8 yards per passing play. It's 31st in the NFL. We know who to stack with Deshaun Watson. It's real easy, I think, to kind of look at this game and those 2 quarterbacks be the most appealing from like a floor and ceiling perspective on the main slate.
Daigle, compare Newton to Watson. And just did a quick 9 rushing touchdowns for Newton. Of course, that's what's building his floor. And he doesn't the best receivers to throw the ball to, obviously. But there is an interesting pairing, especially on DK when you talk about the price.
He got one.
Yeah, he's bought one he really, really likes. And he can dump it off to a couple running backs as well, too, in theory. But Newton versus Watson, who do you prefer there, Daigle?
I mean, honestly, I like them both. So since the regime change for Houston, if we throw out that win game this past week against Cleveland, Watson has completed 70.5% of his passes for 11 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Brandon Cooks leads the way with a 27% target share in that span, but it's still Will Fuller who's hanging around here as a wide receiver 1 with a 22% target share. Also, to run it back, it is very easy as well because we know who Cam Newton's going to go to. The past 3 games, only one person on that team has a 40% target share in every single game, and that is, of course, Jacoby Myers. And even if he gets the Bradley Roby treatment, I don't know. The fact is they still move him around to the slot as well. What I like about this game is not only do we have 2 explosive quarterbacks, and we haven't even mentioned that Watson has the rushing juice the past 3 games out of nowhere as well, with at least 7 carries in every single one of those games. But then also, it's just a condensed target tree. So you like it all the way around. I guess if you told me to pick one, it'd probably be Cam, because like Rich said, I do think people are still have this stigma where they don't want to play him. But even so, in these last 5 games, QB 11, QB 36 on the week, because remember, he was benched against the Niners. Bad game plan overall. But then QB 11, QB 8, QB 11. Just a consistent QB 1 despite throwing for, 1 touchdown. So sure, it's Cam, Myers, and then you can go wherever you want in the passing game or on the ground even with Duke Johnson for the Texans.
Yeah, these are the 2 worst teams against DVO as far as rush against DVO, 31 and 32. And the New England side, I'm not enthused about it. I just don't like it. It's a little too murky for me. It's sort of like Indianapolis in that way. And as far as New England, like Damian Harris basically has to run for 100 yards because he's not going to catch the ball. I guess he can in theory. Sure, why not? And Duke Johnson was on the field, Hribar. I know 98% of the snaps last week. And if we're going to throw it out for passing, we can throw it out for running as well too. And I'm willing to forgive Duke, and assuming that, as far as we know, David Johnson not expected to be back. He has that concussion. I think it's still lingering. But Duke Johnson's price is still super fair. He makes things work, and if he's on the field for 90% of the time, 80% of the time, that's good enough for me. It's okay. It didn't work out last week, but I'm going back to it. What say you?
I'm okay with it. I think the problem that Duke may have is a similar problem that I think we seen David Johnson have. And just that, like, he can run all the pass routes forever, but if they're not getting targets, it's the same problem. Deshaun Watson, pretty much over the entirety of his career, like he's not really interested in peppering these backs. He's out here to push the rock and make some plays downfield. Because David Johnson was, while he was active before that injury, he was top 3 in routes run among running backs, but was getting targeted on 12% of his routes, which was like 60th in the league. Out there running them routes. But hopefully that doesn't happen to Duke. He was out there, like you said, 95% of the snaps. I think just the fact that Houston can't stop the run is another benefit for Cam because like it's going to make all the passing comfortable too. Anytime that New England can just run their offense, that's when Cam's looked his best. So I think that Houston run defense is another plus, another check in Cam's toolbox there. Damian Harris has been excellent. Like you said, I mean, he's got 100 yards in 3 of his 6 games. He's averaged over 5 yards per carry in 5 of his 6 games. Everyone knows he's getting the ball. 75% of his touches are on first down. They're the highest rate in the league, and he still averages over 5 yards per carry. Houston's been one of the worst run defenses on first down in the NFL. Actually, the worst, 5.7 yards per carry. Like you said, though, Dean, I mean, he's caught 2 passes all year. He doesn't have a third down touch, and then Newton's hoarding all the touchdowns. So I mean, Damian Harris is one of these guys. Like he's like a guy that like it could just be like bad for us though, because he can have a really good game and soak up all these yards that we want other guys to get. But yeah, I mean, I have no problem going back to Duke. At his price. I haven't figured out if I will yet this week, but I love the Myers, stacking. DK dropped the ball on Myers, man. I don't know what they were doing. And Daigle brought up Bradley Roby. Like Jacoby Myers just played the Ravens in the rain. Like in like a sideways rain. Like I ain't worried about Bradley Roby.
And he got you a Julian Edelman touchdown touchdown as well.
There you go.
Oh yeah.
But we're just smashing the over on cornerback wide receiver matchups. The over under is usually like a half. I guess it's like the 3rd or 4th time we're referencing it.
No, we like to bring it up to dunk time. We like to take jabs.
Now they're talking about Gilmore. Who's Gilmore going to cover? Is it going to be Fuller or is it going to be Cooks? Do we know? Do we care?
Is he going to play?
I don't know.
The Patriots are still doing that thing with him and like 17 others every week where they just keep listing him as questionable, but it's been 2 or 3 weeks now and he hasn't played. So we really don't know.
And for Myers also for the FanDuel people, he's $6K over there, which still is super reasonable. $6K seems like a really, really good price. But 4.9 on DK is fairly egregious. I like him on both.
Well, for the FanDuel people, Damian Harris is 5,800 and that's where we want to play him, not DK, since we don't have to worry about the receiving bonus.
Yeah, that's a good point as well too. Where you're rewarded more for touchdowns and you're penalized for catching the ball. You don't get the full point, obviously. Anything else in this game that's worth talking about? It's worth exploring, or how shall we hit a position by position? Do we have a Fuller versus Cooks take? Hribar, I feel like you didn't touch on that one. Maybe I missed it.
Daigle nailed it. I mean, it's
okay.
easy to play. Like, look at, I mean, Cooks leads the team in targets and receptions over the past 5 games. But like Fuller's not that far behind, and Fuller has the touchdown equity. So I mean, both.
All right, quarterbacks. I guess for DK, if Teddy doesn't go, a longtime XFL fans remember PJ Walker. He's 4.8K. Super, super cheap. And, in a matchup against Detroit that we're not afraid of necessarily. I don't know how much we're pinched for pennies, but that's kind of sort of somewhat interesting, I suppose. Maybe. Anybody care about PJ Walker? What's Wednesday and why even talk about it? Is that the thing?
Well, I care about PJ Walker because I'm playing the Lions defense if he starts. I know that.
You're not a PJ Walker truther.
No. Like the XFL didn't offer. I'm like one of 3 people who watched it every week. It didn't offer any standout defenders or pass rush whatsoever. The AAF was the supreme league because they actually had Keith Reeser Island. They had Demontre Moore wrecking pass rushes. All of those guys, majority of them have landed on NFL rosters. The XFL is just Donald Parham and then PJ Walker, and that's literally it. Like that league was so bad. So no, like if Walker's under center, and of course if Will Gurr's under center as well, like I'm playing the Lions defense.
Hribar, other quarterbacks that are kind of sort of we could play the haircut narrative for Herbert. People are very excited about his haircut today on Twitter. Alex Smith, he's cheap. I don't know if he looks like something's, obviously something's wrong with him to some degree. I'm going to play some Lamar Jackson, maybe actually because I hate myself, but I think there's a ceiling there and I'm waiting for it. And it's the Martingale strategy. And I feel like it's owed to me eventually. And if it happens and I don't have him, I'll be very upset. And I'll just keep spending the tax every single week just until it comes. We shall see. And it's a good matchup against Tennessee. And Brown is still cheap. And I guess we can play some Andrews. In theory, he's super cheap on DK at 4.9K. Hribar, other quarterbacks. What do you have for me?
Yeah, I mean, Herbert, you can always pay up for if you want. I mean, he is expensive, on both sites. Ben Roethlisberger, I think, is another good spot again.
Yeah.
So the Steelers, they have not run the ball well at all this past month, and against the Cowboys and the Bengals, especially the past 2 weeks. Like, it's one thing we don't bat an eye when you don't run well on the Ravens, but when you can't run the ball on either the Cowboys or a game that you win by 30 points against the 31st ranked run defense against running backs. Like, now I'm starting to catch, kind of look at some things. And the Jaguars have been a bad run defense in totality, but they've had moments where they've been good. Like, they shut down, Derrick Henry the one game. I wouldn't say shut down, but they limited Derrick Henry. And then last week they looked decent against the Packers. But we know they can't stop the pass every week. And the Steelers have just swerved into hey, Ben, you can just throw it 35 times, and the way you're throwing the ball is kind of like, Drew Brees in a sense, where that could be our run game. We're totally cool with you just throwing a bunch of, slants and stack rub routes to all these guys. I mean, they've run that trio stack play where one of the outside receiver just comes under the other two guys. Like, I've seen them run that play, it feels like 15 times a game. Almost every third down, it feels like they run that play. So, I mean, if they're just going to treat Ben's short passing game as the run game, I mean, there's another opportunity here. The Jaguars are 32nd in EPA against the pass. They've got 9 sacks this year. 9. They can't get to the quarterback at all. So, I mean, I think he's another good play in another good spot as well. But yeah, I mean, I think we covered the ground on all the quarterbacks we really want to play just throughout talking the game.
Rich took my only other one, honestly, I wrote down because I do like the games we covered in those quarterbacks. So I will say to add with Roethlisberger also in this time, not only have they not been able to run, but they've had a approach change and passing at the league's 3rd highest rate these past 2 weeks with the lead. And that's in running 64 plays in that time with the lead, 62 maybe. So it's a heavy dose of just Roethlisberger dropping back. And I know you're asking, what's the double stack there? I don't think you can go wrong either way. To me, it's still Deontay and Claypool, but Juju's still getting it done every single week as well. So you really can't go wrong with the double stack against the Jaguars secondary.
Yeah, I mean, trying to figure out Pittsburgh is trying to figure out Indianapolis, but they're actually good players.
Yeah, but they all hit. Yeah.
Yeah. Johnson's is he going to stay healthy? Yes. Okay, then he's going to have a good day. Claypool, he gets those runs at the end zone. They like him in the red zone. He seems like a guy that's going to elevate to the number one, if not by next week, by next year. He's been awesome so far. Rookie there at Notre Dame. All right, let's talk about the running back. Speaking of rookies, Swift they announced him he's a starter last week. It's he's a starter. What does that mean? That, who cares if somebody's starting or not? But he got a big chunk of the snaps. I believe it was 70% or so, give or take. He was awesome as well. Is it Kalen Ballage season? If you believe Coach speaks, apparently he's going to be the guy this week for the Chargers. And these are the guys that are popping right now in the models because they're pretty cheap. And Swift, well, I think their price bump, he's still pretty reasonable. And I imagine he was great. There's no reason not to keep going to him. Swift, Ballage, we talked about Cook. Cook is awesome, great matchup, and if you get the salary, by all means, go for it. But Daigle, what do you have for you? What were your thoughts as far as Swift and Ballage? Who else you have on your board?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Ballage is even coach speak. Tremaine Pope was active for that game, and he only played on special teams. And Ballage had 46 snaps for that backfield because remember, Justin Jackson's on IR now, and then Joshua Kelly only had 17. Ballage had 23 touches, which were the second most of any Chargers running back at any point this year. And also, he has the 4th most touches among all running backs the past 2 games. So it's not even coach speak. It's just the fact that they have nowhere else to go. They don't trust Josh Kelly, and they are going to Ballage each and every week. And no one else new is joining that backfield, so we have to assume that he's going to get a majority of the work in a great spot against the Jets. I kind of like the over in that game too, so I kind of like receivers in that game as well. But for DeAndre Swift, we had already seen, remember, Rap Sheet did this 3 weeks ago, I think it was, where he declared DeAndre Swift the starter, and that wasn't the case at all. And then it happens again this week, and then it actually was a changing of the guard. 76% of the team's carries, a 15% target share, and now has a luscious matchup that we always target running backs for, and that's against the Panthers. So I wish the usage was down a little bit because he's almost too good of a play, and DK really didn't adjust his price for that play. But assuming that workload sticks, of course, Ballage and Swift are both amazing plays this week.
Hribar, running backs?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to get away from those guys, especially Swift. I think Swift's a great play on FanDuel for you FanDuel cronies out there. The way he fits into lineups, I think is really good. So you talk about just the amount of touches and his receiving ability. I think he fits there really well. And roster construction. He's almost a similar price. And anytime you have the running backs that are similar price, it's definitely an advantage, on FanDuel with the extra salary. So, I mean, he looks good. You kind of hit upon maybe going back to the Mike Davis well. I think you can, if you're willing to swallow it. You look at, and I don't want to make excuses for him because he just hasn't played good either. But, Buccaneers, Saints, Bears, Falcons, like all those teams are, 3 of those 4 teams are in the top 6 in yards per carry allowed to running backs, even coming into the matchup. Detroit's significantly way worse, 28th. They're 32nd receiving points allowed. So, I mean, there's a reason to say, like, yeah, well, Mike Davis is running into some really crummy matchups. The usage is still kind of there, too. Like, it's in terms of running back carries. But, I mean, obviously he's lost his cash game sheen that he had the first, 3 games he played there. Love Swift. And I think you can go back to Antonio Gibson, too. The Washington's been favored in 1 game this year. And in that game, Antonio Gibson had 20 touches. They're favored at home this week again, very slightly. It's tight. It's not like they're just going to slam dunk, walk away with it. But he did have 20 touches in that game that they were favored. His game script held out in a good matchup. He has another good matchup again this week. It's the Bengals who are 31st in yards per carry at the running backs. In that game that they led throughout. Because remember, McKissick has had 29 targets. But 2 weeks ago, they had their highest passing game script that they had the entire season, and the second highest in an NFL game this season. And then they chased points as largely a byproduct of throwing to J.D. McKissick in this game against Detroit last week. But he only had 2 targets in that game at home that they held, as a home favorite against the Cowboys. If they're able to, hold the lead, we might not see as much as him. He's kind of, that's the role he plays. He plays third downs and he plays in passing situations. If Washington is able to get some pressure, get some sacks, get out to a lead, I mean, we're probably not going to see a lot of him. Now, granted, we have to predict the game script game, but not a terrible spot, I think, to go back objectively to Antonio Gibson as well. I actually like the Bengals side of that too. I think Burrow's just way too cheap on DK. But another time.
Who's your favorite receiver to pair with? You prefer Higgins or Boyd? You have a take?
I like Higgins just a little more because he's my the ceiling archetype. It's like the same thing with the Steelers guys. Even when Claypool wasn't getting targets, it's like you want to play him because he's the archetype that's like, well, this dude can have 2 touchdowns or he's going to catch a 60-yard pass. Like Boyd has to basically have 10 targets to get there, which is fine. He's going to get them because the Bengals drop back to pass 50 times a game. But I am a little more partial to Higgins.
You got a take, Daigle?
I was just going to add on Gibson because I have him written down as well, is that if they do, because remember, Washington's still top 5 in sacks this year. If they do get pressure under Joe Burrow, I still think he can succeed in this game, but he's 35th in completion rate under pressure, 37 of 97 this year. 14 dropbacks under pressure last week against the Steelers and didn't complete a single one. He's been kind of a mess under pressure. So that would entail a good game script for Gibson if that happens.
I hear everybody on Gibson, and I get it. And I know he had a good week last week, obviously bumped by those 2 touchdowns. I just have a hard time rostering a guy that's going to be on the field 40% of the time. It's just my brain has a hard time getting over that. But, I suppose there's definitely some value there as well. And before we move on as far as running back, the chat is demanding it. They want us to talk about the dude from the Dolphins. I'm forgetting his name in my head right now.
Ahmed?
Yeah, is he a thing? I know Breida potentially might come back. I don't know if that's going to muck things up or not. Talk about the Dolphins running back situation.
I think it's very simple. He's new Myles Gaskin. We were never playing Myles Gaskin because he was good. He had a high floor because he had a super high floor because he didn't come off the field and he was involved in the passing game. What did Salvon Ahmed do last week? He didn't come off the field. He played the same exact role. He ran a pass route on 58% of team dropbacks. It was 9th among all running backs in the NFL last week. He played 76% of snaps and then had 22 to 26 backfield touches. It's really easy. He didn't light anything up on the efficiency board, but that's what Gaskin was doing. It's like the same thing. He's new Gaskin.
Yeah, he's got a chance. If he gets 20 touches, of course, he's in play. You definitely want to monitor that running back situation.
Their favorite team against the terrible Denver Broncos.
Right.
Who are the listless Broncos. They didn't even try last week, the Broncos. They didn't even try in that game. They quit. They quit a quarter and a half in. Drew Lock is – I'm done. I can't just move on. Let's move on.
Yeah, 5,600 on FanDuel for Ahmed. We know he's not going to get the passing work, so that's where you would roster him. And again, if Breida comes back, it could ruin the whole situation. So it's somewhat scary.
I didn't know this, but according to the chat, apparently Ahmed was Gaskin's backup in college.
Yeah, UW, baby.
So.
UW, baby.
There you go. Let's knock out some receivers.
Okay. I thought the chat was going to ask for a man.
No, you know what they got?
Maybe
there will be one coming up in the next couple of weeks, but we've been spared today. We love Manscaped. We much appreciate when they sponsor the show, but everybody's been spared, and therefore the show is not going to go an hour and a half. We are going to talk about receivers, though. Daigle, fire off some of the receivers on your board that we've yet to talk about.
I think we can go back to A.J. Brown. The box score was not friendly to him. But again, remember, he dropped that wide open touchdown. Not wide open, but it was an easy catch along the sideline. And that would have tacked on an extra 50 yards and a touchdown. It's against Marlon Humphrey, of course. But if we do get the Ravens offense responding, which I'm a little bit skeptical about, but if everyone's going to play them, remember that before that, they were just jamming targets to him. So at least 7 targets in every single game. So I think he is still a safe play this week. And it's a good spot because he's not going to be rostered, even though, again, he dropped that touchdown.
All right. C. Brown and Raisin. What do you have for me, Hribar?
I mean, listen, it's not a great cheapie week. Obviously, I think, we could play Terry McLaurin until they price him up finally. He feels a lot like last year's DJ Moore, where his price doesn't move because he doesn't score touchdowns. But he gets so many targets every week, and he's so good after the catch, and has such a high team target share. I feel like he should be more expensive than he is every week. So I mean, you can always play him. I mean, listen, as long as Judy is this cheap too, I know his quarterback situation sucks, but his opportunity is just so ginormous right now. You just look at the past 3 weeks. I mean, he's been first or second in air yards the last 3 weeks every week. I mean, granted they're not all catchable targets, which is a problem, but as long as he's this cheap, I'll keep taking swings that, maybe he connects on a couple of those because, man, he's priced so low at the position that if you just can just hit a couple, man, at those, you're going to be all right. But not a great cheap week in totality. I think we covered a lot of ground earlier on guys we want to play like Jacoby Myers, on DraftKings, and obviously the Falcons guys you could play. But I'm waiting for some enlightenment on another cheap guy to go to here.
Well, how about this one?
Go ahead.
Amari Cooper. Look, again, speaking of, we're in that conversation of terrible quarterbacks. Dalton expected back. I don't know if terrible is the right word to use, but subpar. Sure, we'll be kind if he's watching. What's up, Red Rocket? Or is it Red Rifle? One's one thing and one's totally something else. I'm not sure.
Not Red Rocket, I can tell you that much.
He's the Red Rifle.
He is the Red Rifle.
Not the Red Rocket.
He's the Rusty Rifle. It's truly what he is.
But, okay, so Amari is 5'4". 5'4" on DK, which I believe is the lowest we've ever seen him on DK. In a dome, probably coming back when we're presuming that they're going to be down here against Minnesota. And we haven't talked about the Minnesota receivers. Those guys are both in play as well. Jefferson and Thielen against this, Dallas team. Thoughts as far as these receivers. Daigle, do you have a thought in this game as far as, in theory, there should be some value as far as the receivers in this game?
Yeah, and Minnesota's team total is 28, which bodes well for either Dalvin Cook or the passing game, perhaps all of them. And then, of course, Amari on the run back, because on Dalton's 98 dropbacks this year, he has targeted Amari 19 times for the team high in target share. I'm still, Dalton may be a good play. I can't wrap my head around it because the matchup does set up well, especially because the Vikings defense is one we have attacked outside of Nick Foles, who doesn't attack anyone. So Cowboys offense should logically be able to move the ball, but how long have we been saying that? And without Dak Prescott, they've averaged 13 points. They have not moved the ball whatsoever. Zeke has been one of the worst running backs in the league. So it's a scary situation. It would be Cooper for me in that spot. And then I just don't think the Cowboys defense has it at all to stop the Vikings and Dalvin Cook, which means 2 weeks ago, we'd go back to Kirk Cousins having 14 pass attempts, and we can't use them whatsoever. So I'm just worried about that matchup at all, even though it seems like we do need exposure no matter how we get it towards the Vikings offense. And then I think the cheapies are going to come from the Jets, whether it's Perryman or Denzel Mims. Jamison Crowder back, of course, and has led the team in target share when healthy. But I like the over in that game. The Chargers now, the last 6 games, have allowed 31.6 points per game to opposing offenses. And then, of course, we saw Perryman spike with Flacco on the boundary where Casey Hayward has been getting beat. And then the Jets, before the bye as well, sixth in the league in play action, and ninth in pre-snap motion with Dow Loggins calling plays. So maybe Joe Flacco doesn't have in his bag to do that again, but I kind of like the Jets receivers as well.
Specific to DK, Mims is popping in the optimals for the, we live in the world of a salary cap, and he's still super, super cheap at 3.3K. And if you're going to get 7 or 8 targets at 3.3K, I'm trying to on the comeback, presumably here against the Chargers, you just might have to make that work. It did work last week for those that played Reynolds at 3.5. Those that played dude for the Dolphins was what Stoneman and Jakeem Grant, all 5'9" of him, I believe.
I talked about Devontae Parker, and he had the touchbar, and they got called back. And then of course it went to one of their 4 tight ends that I can never choose them.
Hribar, you got anything else as far as receivers? AJ Green, I mentioned it in passing. Is just crazy cheap. T.Y. Hilton is crazy cheap for these names, like 3.6K for AJ Green. T.Y. is like 4.4 or 4.5. This is DK specific. The name brands, but like these are spoiled name brands, right? They're no longer what they used to be. Yeah, they're cheap. That's the nicest thing we can say about them.
Yeah, I like the Mari call. Maybe I like that Chargers game offers something, on either side. Whether it be even a guy like Jalen Guyton, who is running a lot of pass routes, getting that exercise because he's got if he catches one, it's gonna be a 50-yarder. He's running a lot. He's running a ton of pass routes though. He's out there a ton. And then Mims is so cheap. Mims ran a pass route 100% of the dropbacks last time that they were on the field. So there's opportunity there. Maybe that's a game too. And don't forget about those late afternoon games. The Cowboys one is interesting because as bad as the Cowboys been, I refuse to believe that Andy Dalton is that bad. Is this bad? I don't think he's good. I'm not saying Andy Dalton is a league winner or something. I've seen Andy Dalton play a lot of football, and I have a hard time believing he's as bad as the 6-7 quarters we've seen him play. Maybe he just is. Maybe it's fallen off that quickly, but especially with these receivers, for it to not be turn into at least something we can use. We were all excited. Remember when he took over? It was this. At least he'll keep this afloat. It's not going to be what we had with Dak, but it'll be usable. And it hasn't been.
No.
I'm still holding on to there's just no way he can be this bad, right? He can't be this bad, right?
That's what I keep looking at that total in that game. It's why aren't we talking about that game? And it's because we just have no reason to trust them outside of what he's done historically, which should be enough, honestly. But yeah.
Well, it's easily one of the most laughable coaching staffs too in the league, which gives us no faith on both sides of the ball. Mike Nolan is he's the fantasy football gift of this season. Bringing Mike Nolan out of retirement because he hasn't been in the NFL for multiple years and bringing him in to be your defensive coordinator, that has just played out in spades to be just a gift to us because they're awful and they've had some injuries, but they do get Awuzie back this week, but they lost Trayvon Diggs for multiple weeks. But man, that team is just so bad on both sides of the ball from a coaching perspective. Even that game, you go back to the Steelers game, not to make it get away from DFS, but how do you not just QB sneak it on that fourth and win the game? You're a 2-6 team. How do you not just go win the game? Yeah. You're a 14-point underdog. You're not supposed to win. Mike McCarthy is clown shoes. He made up a lie to get himself back into the NFL, that he was some kind of analytics guru now. And I'm sorry, Cowboys fans. I'm sorry.
And more to your point, Dean, on the Vikings receivers, since Jefferson got inserted to the lineup in week 3, we've seen Thielen still Monday night, just living off of touchdowns while Jefferson is spiking in yards per route run. Thielen has 11 end zone targets, 10 red zone targets to Jefferson's 1 in that span in both categories.
Not to live in the past again, but why was Jefferson not playing week 1? Was it BB or Alabisi John? Who was getting run ahead of him? I did not understand. What was going on there?
They were playing him at the wrong position.
I just don't understand.
Yeah, they moved him outside in week 3 and then liftoff.
Yeah, he's been phenomenal.
NFL coaches, man. NFL coaches.
Yeah, I hate to be the guy that sits on my couch and says I know more than these guys because I know I don't, but I feel some things I'm you understand this is how you use your timeouts. It's not very hard. This is how I played Madden before.
If you watch the Jets-Chargers game, I assure you, you're going to know more than those guys.
But one of the questions of this podcast has basically been it can't be really that bad. This isn't really that bad. Dalton's not really that bad. This is the segue to tight ends. It can't be really – well, maybe it can.
Nope, it's that bad.
No, yeah.
The most expensive tight end on DK is Andrews. We talk about Taysom Smith at 4.5K on FanDuel. We all seem to like that because it's super, super cheap. There is some upside, and there's basically no opportunity cost because there's no good tight ends playing. At least the top tight ends aren't playing this week. But if you're going to have to pick somebody, Andrews at 4.9 is interesting, I guess, and the price is pretty fair. And again, I've been sucked into that multiple times. Is there anybody else that's appealing here, Hribar, at tight end? Yeah.
I mean, appealing, no. Like, I've been on this train for a while. It's bad. I mean, I still think you can squint and tell yourself a story on a number of these guys, whether it be Hayden Hurst or Dallas Goedert still or Austin Hooper trying to throw out what happened on both sides of the ball, that week. It's just literally, though, are you going to catch a touchdown, man? I mean, it's really – that's where we are. Is this guy going to score a touchdown? Because you can even say, like, Logan Thomas or – I mean, all these guys just need a touchdown. It's not good. I mean, what guy here has what guy you think has the highest odds to get you a 100-yard bonus? Is there even possible any of these guys do it? Are we fighting guys? It's rough. It's just it's a terrible position this year, and we do this every year. But the fact that Andrews is gone and just got caught into this wake of terribleness in that offense, him and Marquise Brown. And we're living with Marquise Brown's volatility was one thing we could have done. But Andrews, because Andrews is playing so many more snaps than he did last year. And it's like all we said was like this all this guy does is produce, like, wait till he gets opportunity. And he's been on the field so much more. And he's just been, like I said, caught in the wake of that offense just not being as efficient as it was last year. And it sucks. He has the potential. You're right. He is the one guy at 4.9 to say, like, this guy could catch multiple touchdowns and get 100 yards. Because I don't think that there is another guy on there that even has close odds that you could say that about.
Cam Brate was the tight end 4 in week 9 or week 10 because of a touchdown. Pharaoh Brown was the tight end 7 because of a touchdown. Durham Smythe caught 2 passes for 9 yards. Doesn't matter. Tight end 11 because of a touchdown. That's all it takes. So that's why you're playing Taysom Hill and taking those 8 carries and calling it a day.
Yeah, I mean, the chat's talking about Taysom Hill's going to flop so hard. He might. There's a chance he puts up 3 points.
Every tight end flops. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, but half the other guys are going to put up 3 to 5 points.
Listen, as Pete Overzet would say, if Taysom Hill only has 3 points, you did not understand the antithesis behind the play in the first place.
Did you say Pete Overzet? Because I happen to have a man's coin, a real live man's coin right next to me. So how about that? There you go. He's with me.
I mean, that's the point, though. With no Travis Kelce on this slate, there's no person you're scared of having to busting at the position. That's the whole point. Is you look at there's no Kelce, there's no Waller, so you have Mark Andrews is really the only threat to that even has really odds to get to 20 plus points. I
would say.
So you don't care. You're looking at the field and you're saying, all right, if I play Taysom Hill and he sucks, how am I getting buried? And who is burying you? Who is burying you if you do that? Yeah.
Somebody's going to score more than 13. I don't know who it's going to be. Somebody's going to, and it might be who was the guy you mentioned? Not Schultz, but some other guy that his name sounded like that.
Mo Alley Cox?
No. There was a person that scored a touchdown
last week. I definitely want to play Mo Alley Cox though if those guys are out.
Oh, it's so bad.
I'm
just playing a tight end with my game stacks. That's typically
even
what
the guys we have told ourselves that we think are good. Like Hawkinson, everyone's every time I bring up tight ends, Hawkinson's been awesome. It's he's been usable in the context of tight ends, but look at his overall scoring and the way it plays out to fantasy. He's not doing anything impressive. He's like the Todd Gurley of tight ends. He gets 50 yards and he catches a touchdown. There's these guys that we're just happy to have, like Noah Fant. We're happy to have them because it's a guy we don't have to rotate every week. It's not like they're doing anything amazing, though, for our lineups. They're not altering the course of our fantasy teams. They're just guys that are getting there in the context of the position.
Even citing their routes run, it doesn't even matter. These guys are running routes and they're not doing anything. So it's a disaster.
Play whatever you want.
Yeah, there you go. Their Spellcast apparently is on Hunter Henry for what it's worth. The chat's telling us. And yeah, I mean, sure, against the Jets, he's fine. Hurst is fine at 4.4 as a run back, especially if you're playing New Orleans guys. Gesicki's a guy who can, in theory, get loose, I suppose. I don't know. We might get Ertz back, so that's one more guy that's not going to catch a touchdown.
Oh, God.
So, whatever, man. I don't know. I want to finish strong on this show. I feel like it was a good show, but that's it. Like, what else? We're done. The order goes tight end, and then we go. We say holler, and we tell the people where they can find us on Twitter and all that. But Daigle, if you got anything to finish strong, by all means. But otherwise, tell them where they can find you. Of course, they're all following on Twitter, but by all means, tell them where they can find you on Twitter anyway, where they get your content, all the good stuff.
My final note is if Zach Ertz is active, do not play him. And you can find me at NotJDaigle for more information like that, rotoroll.com. And, of course, as always, here on Wednesdays with my buddies. And then next Wednesday, apparently, too, as we get ready for Thanksgiving, we will still be here.
Yeah, Zach Ertz unplayable at 3.7K on DK. What a world. What do you have, Hribar? Tell the people where they can find you.
sharpfootballanalysis.com. It happens to be a free week this week at sharpfootballanalysis.com. So go there and do whatever you want. Not only is my stuff free, which you probably don't care about because you listen to me here, but we have a couple of tools you can use on the site for free. And all of Warren's picks this week are on the free site too. The entire site is open, and Mr. Sharp has been fire this year, man. He's hitting like 70% for everyone that's got subs. So come in this week and just follow his picks and bet some money.
Yeah, he's a sharp dude for sure. And our producer Devin's telling us that Evan Ingram's another tight end we didn't even talk about that's not playing this week. So, and he's been one of the most reliable tight ends on
Sources
the season.
say he's a tight end.
Allegedly, he's going to play that. All right, we got to go. We got to step aside. We much appreciate you guys watching the NFL Pick Six show. Devin's going to go ahead and drop the final links for us. We should have mentioned at some point, but you should be playing the FanDuel single entry series sponsored by RotoGrinders. Best single entry contest to play there on FanDuel. The Core 4, get yourself $5 off premium. Basketball right around the corner. Basketball draft going down tonight. You can get all the good stuff on RG. We didn't get a chance to show off all our tools. We don't do that in the show, unfortunately, but lots of fun tools. You want to build 150 lineups, we help you make that happen very, very easily. All right, we got to go. That was Rich Hribar. That was John Daigle. I was Dean. This was football. We're out of here. Holler.